May the force be with you is a phrase used to wish a person well to overcome a challenge. The invitation in this podcast, May the life force be with you, is to explore what it means to truly feel alive, to appreciate the physical, emotional and spiritual connection to our energy, and finally to understand how this impacts who you are and all that you do. May this conversation inspire you to thrive. This episode of May the Life Force Be With You is brought to you by Moment Company and the Moment Pebble. The Moment Pebble is a beautiful, natural stone, light-guided breathing device and is a unique gift for someone who needs that gentle reminder to stop and take a break, to take moments throughout their busy day and to practice mindfulness. Just head over to momentcompany.co, that's momentcompany.co, and enter the code LIFEFORCE at checkout to receive an exclusive 10% podcast discount. Hello, and welcome to a new episode of May the Life Force Be With You. Hi, I'm Fiona, and hi, Kahreela.
Hi, it feels like it's been ages.
It does. Well, it has been. I'm really interested to know what you've been up to. And since we last kind of connected, we've both turned a new decade, which is interesting. We've both got a new number in front of our age.
How was your birthday?
Awesome.
Yeah.
So much fun. Very grateful for everybody in all my different walks of life and eras that were there, and we danced and it was perfect. I loved it. And on my actual birthday I did nothing because the weather here was rubbish. But it's such a lovely it was such a lovely thing to connect with people again and to see my friends from different eras of and different stages of my life all come together for the first time as well. So that was really lovely. And I only had one panic attack. And that was when the very first card that I opened that had the number on it, I kind of went because I hadn't really fully acknowledged it. And then when I saw that number, I'm like, holy shit, that's a big number. And then it passed. I feel quite good about being half a century.
My guides talk about power sometimes as like the longer you are here for, the more power you have, or the more magic you have. And I really like that, you know, it's like the power that comes from, they talk about it in terms of like magical law. So they talk about it in terms of like the power of the plants is like more potent than human power because they've been here longer.
That's so contradictory to what we are told. We are told our life force is depleted, is drained as we get older. We have less to give. We've got less energy. It's all about less, really. That's the message that we're kind of given, I feel. And what you've just beautifully shared is the opposite of that. And it's like, no, there's more. You're stronger, you've got more experience, more wisdom, more to share. There's something beautiful about flipping that narrative on its head.
And I think the narrative about the Western perception of age is a distortion.
Mm-hmm.
Because ancestrally and in other cultures, like the older someone is, the more celebrated and respected for their power they are. And it's like we really that's a really dark distortion in our collective consciousness to make us not want to age.
It is, isn't it? It is that complete opposite of how you feel. And they always say, is it youth is wasted on the young kind of thing. And we do have different perspectives. It's funny because there's in my industry, and I'm sure in a lot of people's things, their youth is celebrated. There's always this like 20 under 20 or 40 under 40, and the people that are really crushing it and achieving it at an early age. And just this year, maybe just because it's in my eye line, I've noticed that there's been a 60 over 60. Like, let's celebrate people that are doing things and making changes, and leaning into who they really are and setting out a new path when they're older. That's bravery, that's resilience, that's courage, that's creativity to want to keep, to change, to push, to build a better future for yourself, for others. I feel like there's more in service when it comes from people that are older. It's less commercially driven. It usually comes from the heart more, I feel. So yeah, I love this kind of trend that I'm seeing where it's celebrating people that are doing things later in life.
Yeah, I think, and especially, I think getting older is amazing for everybody, but especially for women. The menopause and the crowned 1 years are really when a woman's in her highest power, her highest form of magic. And
Mm-hmm.
if that distortion around age as being less didn't exist and we actually perceived it, then it's like, well, if you're in your highest power, what are you going to do? If you've got more magic than you had before, what are you going to do?
It feels
I
exciting.
think that service thing, it is exciting. And I agree with you about what you said about the service. I think that, like, our experiences in life give us a depth of service that only comes from time.
Mm.
Yeah.
I feel that, yeah, I'm trying to. Why do you think that is?
I think when you're younger, it's funny, I actually was talking about attending workshops held by younger people, which is something that happens as you get older.
Yeah.
I was talking about if I was being judgmental or things like that. But I do think that there is, when I was talking about it, I was like, what I landed on was that you don't understand the nature of the cycles until you've lived some of them. And so I did this when I was younger. I've seen other people do this when they're younger and holding space or teaching. You talk from a point of, I have completed this now, or I have learnt this and mastered this, because you're at the end of a cycle and you haven't got the wisdom that that's going to come back round again. It's like you don't have the cyclical perspective if you're still in the first cycle of your adulthood. And the cyclical perspective is this perspective that ultimately, when we perceive through the cycle, we can only perceive in service. Because, as we've talked about on My Life Force so many times, it's like, if you isolated the winter as being just the experience, it would be a disaster and it would be traumatic and it would be reactive. Same as if you isolate the summer, it would be like everything's amazing. and kind of the more cycles that you get to live, whether they are astrology cycles, annual cycles, decade cycles, personal cycles, healing cycles, the more you understand that whatever is happening in the moment is a surrendering into and a serving of what's next and what's been before. And that's service. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And having spent my summer winter in Australia with teenagers, I hope they're not listening. You know, we've done something once, so we think we're an expert. Like, teenager wisdom is something that is interesting when you observe from the outside, where, you know, they feel like they just know absolutely everything about life and you can't tell them anything. And that's part of the journey as well, right? That is part
Mm.
of the cycle. But gosh, you really notice it when you're like observing back, going, oh my God, I was that little shit that thought they knew everything as well. Boy, did I not know anything, and my poor mother, you know, and you kind of like see the cycle replaying itself both in your own life and, like, you know, at that sort of
Mm.
macro life force level, as well. And we just, you know, there's a bit of me that's like, shut up and listen. Shut up and listen to, and you know what? We're all doing all for the first time in
Mm.
that moment. We don't
Yeah.
know anything other than this moment, but
Yeah.
there is something around that almost reassurance of a pattern that you
Mhm.
get from the wisdom having lived through it. And there's you know, everything is not a catastrophe. Things rejuvenate, things come round again, things which are good become challenging, things which are challenging become good. And you just learn to ride that wave, to move with that ebb and flow. And that only comes when you know that the tide does come in and go back out again. And then the same over and over and over. And the more comfortable you are with those patterns, the more wisdom and flow you carry with it. And that's how I kind of feel. You're not trying to fight against anything or stop it. You just become more in flow with it.
You just become more surrendered into
Mhm.
the creational currents, you know, and
Can I just say one other thing, which
yeah.
is definitely not in the spirit of spirit or guidance, but you give less fucks.
That is in the spirit of spirit,
There's
100%.
there's a fuck library, and there's only so many books you want to take out on a daily basis, and they just become less. And that is really beautiful thing. You stop caring about what people think because you realize nobody's thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves. You care more about how you feel rather than what you're doing or what perception of what you think people think that you're doing. And I think that that is the fuck library, or the fuck withdrawals become a lot less as you as you get older as well. And it's super freeing.
And
Anyone
I
under
think
the age of
I
20
think
listening.
not giving a fuck is absolutely being of service. Do you know what I mean? Like, the greatest way to be of service is to be true, because it is to be true. You know, like, it is to be true. I had a moment um, in Egypt last week where something triggered me, where I don't actually know if I was lied to or not, but I felt like I was lied to. And because I was on a retreat and doing inner work, I was like examining and magnifying everything that was coming up in me. And like, when I felt into it and I really sat with the pain of it, I realized that, like, this pain of being lied to and the betrayal of it is also the pain that Mother Earth feels when we lie. Like, my guides talk about the fact that actually, as souls, that we only have one actual promise that we make to the earth when we come here. And the promise is to live our truth. We don't make any other promises. And I suddenly, like, had this moment where I was like, this is what Mother Earth feels when humans lie. Like, and it's like, you broke the promise. You're just meant to be here being your truth. Which sounds so simple, but it's actually, from our human perspective, so hard to do.
How did that help you directly with that pain that you were feeling? So understanding that, you know, for people that are listening, you're like, great, I can get a sense of that. But how does that knowledge or that knowing help with your healing or help you pass through that pain that you were feeling? Is it perspective?
I think it made me understand like I'm on a journey at the moment of really trying to understand my pain when it comes up. And in a way, understand what my pain is fighting for, or what my pain is rather than trying to heal it. It's like, what is my pain actually expressing in the moment? And from that perspective, it's like the breaking of the sacred oath stops the flow of service, because by not speaking the truth, you're slowing the whole process down. That's why it's painful, you know? You're slowing what the
You
creative
resisting.
currents want to do down. You're diverting them and distorting them and filtering, and you're not allowing the life force of the earth to flow in the way that it wants to flow. And so that's from that perspective. But in terms of like I've been since I've got to Egypt, because it's my new decade too, I was like, I really want to tune in and develop and evolve my relationship with myself. And part of that is being able to connect to the part of me that reacts to things, and not just try and not feel it or try and heal it, but be like, actually, where's the valid reason as to why you're having this response?
Mm.
You know, it's because those parts, they want to be heard, you know, they want to, like, I had another moment with anger where I went to a workshop that was all about anger, and a lot of the techniques in the workshop were about releasing anger, and I was like, no, I want to receive my anger. I really want to meet my anger. I really want to, like, understand. And you know, when I connected into the parts of me that usually my anger comes up because I don't feel loved properly. My anger is like, that isn't good enough. Like, that isn't the standard that I want to be treated, you know? And it's like really kind of fine tuning this, just understanding what are the values underneath these emotions. Because sometimes I think we get very, very caught up in the emotions and the
And labeling them.
reactions and the power of them, as opposed to like, what are these emotions actually trying to say, not to anybody else, but to you? And I think all of this has come from the fact that I had this realization in one of the deep dives I was doing here, that when we have the expression by myself, which, you know, I think triggers quite a lot of people. It can bring up loneliness, it can bring up all of these things, or we can really like it and want to be by ourselves. I suddenly had this moment where I was like, oh, by myself, like beside myself. You know, like I need to be by myself, like sitting by myself. And when you're having those big emotions come up, or when you're having these, like, it's like, what if you're by them? What if you sit by them and go, you know, talk to me, like, what if you are literally by yourself in those moments? How does the relationship with that emotion and that response then change? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. You're almost kind of observing rather
Yeah.
than being caught in this story of
Hmm.
the emotion.
And really hearing your needs, like really hearing your needs of, like, not just the emotion and the like, I'm feeling this, and it's, you know, the lie thing. It was like I went into the emotional response that wasn't even about what I thought may or may not have happened, was about all of the like story, mother wound, trauma, everything else. But then when I actually went by myself, it was like, yeah, this part of me is doesn't want the sacred oath to be broken. You know, doesn't want that. That's what this part, it doesn't know how to express because it's trauma and child, and it doesn't want that.
What does it want?
It wants truth, because truth is service. Because truth is allowing what is meant to happen without trying to control or manipulate it. It doesn't want to be protected by lies. It doesn't want to be diverted by lie. It wants truth, which is allowing what needs to happen to happen. So this part of me is actually very wise.
Yeah.
And very like, you know, and is right to be having a reaction to something that is wrong for me.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if it's what you're saying reminds me. So I was also at a retreat this week. I went to a silent retreat, and it was in the middle of Brighton on the hottest day of the year so far. So it was utter chaos, and it was around us, but it was like we were in this protection bubble, and we looked like some kind of art installation, because when you have 60 people who can't talk to each other but connected, everyone stands like we were like a socially distanced art installation, because everybody's in their own little space and bubble thought, which means that you don't stand next to people in the way that you would do if you were talking to them. So it just, we kind of looked like weird, but everybody was kind of like deep in their own thought. And it's just really interesting when you silence the chatter and you're just left with yourself to see what comes up in those moments, and where you're telling stories and where you're not, and how kind you are to yourself. Or, you know, what's interesting is if I tried to do this like even a year ago, I think the negative chatter would have been really loud.
Really?
But I was so quiet. I didn't even want to start talking again. I was like totally into it. And I had a real kindness that came up in my thoughts when left to just sit and feel. Like you say, it was guided for about 6, 7 hours, and different types of guidance. But I just let go, and I actually had, I think, less thoughts than I normally do, which is interesting when you're being quiet. And just kind of really leaned into what came up. And what came up was a massive amount of love. I literally started at my toenails and went all the way up, and it just came to me really naturally. I love my toenails. They're blue. They're very nice. Uh, you know, I love my blood. I love the cells. I love the bones. Like it literally went through absolutely everything, and then it just expanded and expanded to like where I was lying, the sunshine, the earth, the da 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 da, and just went on and on and on, which just felt so nourishing and so amazing, and not something that I'd intentionally done or thought I could ever do, to be honest, because it's not stuff that I would normally be comfortable talking about. Welcome to May the Life Force be with you. But what was interesting was that once I burst the bubble and we had a little bit of talking at the end, and I went back out into the craziness that is a Saturday that's sunny and Brighton, um, I shouted out loud, I don't want to be on my own anymore. I don't want that anymore. I said out loud to
Mm.
myself, no, I am welcoming in love. I am welcoming. I want somebody by my side. I'm okay that, you know, I know how to be by myself now. And that's really great. And I've got this self-love and compassion that
Mm.
bigger and more expansive than I ever could have thought possible for myself. And now I want more. And I'm going to say it out loud, and I'm saying on the podcast, because that is where that
Yay!
realization hit me. And you come to these moments that you try and suppress, or you're like, oh, I can't really say that. No, I'm saying it. I don't know what it looks like, but that's what I want now. And I don't know where I was going, 50-year-old brain taking over with that. But I just wanted to share that moment of being by myself, what came up.
I think that's so beautiful. And I want to ask, like, why do you think it's, because you said a year ago you don't think you would have been able to do it. What's changed?
Um,
What happened this year that made it possible?
Continuing to be curious and open and learn, and by having these conversations, by meeting the amazing people that we do every week on this podcast, by doing my ayahuasca, by giving less fucks, by being older and wiser, by leaning into all of that, by knowing that the world doesn't revolve around me, but I'm really important in my world, and to look
Mm.
after myself and to nurture myself and to care for myself, because that is the one superpower that I do have. And the more that I lean in and listen to what I need, and be open about it, the more easy it gets. I'm less resistant. I'm less, fearful that if I say my truth, my world's going to collapse. It doesn't. It gets bigger. And I think all of those things are why I'm comfortable in saying all of that, and feeling it and knowing it and leaning into it.
I love that wisdom that if you speak your truth, the world gets bigger. That's just beautiful. That's just powerful. I love it. At the start of my Egypt journey, the retreat I was on, we had blue lotus medicine on the first night.
Okay. I don't know anything about that.
Blue lotus is a beautiful medicine. She's a bit like cacao. She grows on the Nile. She's the medicine from ancient Egypt, and she's a bit like cacao in the fact that she's gentle. But what I always say about her is, like, cacao opens your heart to the world. Blue lotus opens your heart to yourself. Like,
Okay.
she takes you in in a very gentle way, but you meet yourself with blue lotus. And my intention for the whole retreat was to improve my relationship with space, because I realized that I don't have a very healthy relationship with space. And so it's like, I'm going to improve my relationship with space. So I took that into the blue
What does
lotus.
not having a healthy relationship with space look like? Is that because you are life hopping, country hopping, home
The
hopping?
reason I did that retreat, I was torn between two retreats, and one of them would have been another channeling retreat where I would have had my path activated and had loads of upgrades and all sorts of things. And I was like,
Do you need to ground?
my life, my path's amazing. I love my path. My path overrides my life too often. And then my personality self gets upset and overwhelmed and doesn't have enough space just to be. And so I picked the one that wasn't about my path, even though it ended up being part of the lesson was like, okay, I am my path, but that's another story. But yeah, the intention was that, like, it was going to be all about me and not about my path. Don't do that in Egypt, turns out. But yeah, and so I took this intention of, and I realized that I just didn't have a comfortable relationship with space, like have a tendency just to fill the space. That's what I was seeing before it. I was like, as soon as there's space in my diary, I find, don't leave it open, I fill it, fill the space all the time. Like hoarding my own space. And so I was like, I'm gonna improve my relationship with space. And I took that intention into Blue Lotus. And as I was sitting with her, what I understood was that I didn't have the part of me that didn't like space and darkness and nothingness was my own ego, because you cannot project into the space. So you cannot control the perception. Like, the ego likes to project and create perception, which you can do in the beholding of others, in the noise, in the light, but when you're just with space, you can't project into it. And so the ego doesn't get, like, the ego cannot keep control in the space. And what then happens is that the only thing you can meet in the space is your own innocence, your own essence, because you can't project into it. It's dark. And the reason I'm sharing this is because it's like space and silence are the same thing. You know, it feels like that's also what you experienced, of, like, if you're in silence, you can't project through the voice, through the story. Like, all that you're left with is your essence, you know, and the not how you want to be perceived, but what you actually are. And yeah, I feel like it's really interesting that we both started our new decades going, okay, let's not project. and then I find it really beautiful that what you experienced when you were not able to project is just all this expansion and kindness and love.
Yeah. That's exactly what it was. Well, I feel like that's a really nice, very beautiful way to start a new decade between us. With love.
Yeah.
With love.
New decades with love.
Yeah. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I will, while we're here and broadcasting, I will make a request for us to, in the next few weeks, offer a channel perhaps around this to our audience, and to
You're putting it on the show. All right.
so everyone, let's hold Kahreela accountable for that. But thank you for today. It's nice to see you.
It's nice to see you.
And
Happy new decade.
happy new decade to you too.
May the love that you are asking for be bought in the most sexy, beautiful, wonderful package.
Amen to that. And on that note, let's catch up again soon, everyone. We'll keep you all posted.
May the life force be with you. We hope this conversation has topped up your life force energy. If it has, then please help us spread the life force. Like, share, subscribe, all of that. And may the life force be with all of us.